Ladies and gentlemen of the media, thank you for joining us for this press conference called by the Alliance for Change. With me, I have to my far left Ms. Kathy Hughes, Executive Member of the Alliance for Change, and next to her is David Patterson, Chairman of the Alliance for Change, and to my immediate left, Leader of the party, Nigel Hughes. And joining us online, we have Dr. Vincent Adams, our authority on matters related to the oil and gas sector. We will start with a brief statement by Chairman of the party, David Patterson, followed by a statement from Dr. Adams, and then we will come back to the leader of the party, Mr. Nigel Hughes. David Patterson.
Thank you. Thank you, Beverly. Good afternoon, members of the media. In response to a question submitted by Ms. Tabitha Sarro-Halley at the last sitting of Parliament, the response by the Minister of Home Affairs was most alarming. The question was simple. Can the Honorable Minister state what is the number of registered Venezuelans in Guyana as of November 2024? The Minister of Home Affairs reported to the Parliament that between January 2018 and November 2024, there were 15,157 registered Venezuelans in Guyana, and they were located, and I quote, Region 1, 7,507, Region 4, where we reside, 23, Region 7, 1,100, and in Region 8, 65. When questioned about the discrepancy in his figures, particularly where the 6,561 extra registered Venezuelans were located, the minister was unable to provide the Parliament with any reasonable response, and then requested that his response be withdrawn from the records. Ladies and gentlemen, this you can go onto the Parliament website for confirmation of what I'm saying. In addition to the fact that in November 2023, the Minister of Foreign Affairs reported to Parliament that there were over 40,000 Venezuelans in the country. In October of last year, the same Minister of Foreign Affairs stated that there were reportedly over 600 Venezuelan migrants in Region 10. As you can recall, the statement from the Minister of Home Affairs said that other than these four regions, there were no Venezuelan migrants. HIAS, the agency that assists Venezuelan migrants, has reported that their records indicate that there are more than 30,000 such migrants in the country. While on the face of this, one may assume this was a simple error by the Minister of Home Affairs, the exact same incorrect information was communicated to an international audience on April 25th, 2025, at a symposium on migration and security organized by the University of Guyana Center for Migration and Diaspora Studies. It is clear that the PPP government is either clueless or deliberately trying to mislead the country as to the number of migrants currently residing in the country. The AFC acknowledges the circumstances that have caused persons to leave their homeland in search of a better life. And we also acknowledge the positive contribution being made by most migrants, particularly in light of the current labor shortage. The AFC is deeply concerned that in an election year, where the vast majority of Guyanese has expressed concerns about the bloated GCOM electoral list, plus the rumors that thousands of Venezuelans, whether entitled or not, has been included on the GCOM list, that the agency tasked with monitoring and regulating this group cannot provide a factual account of the persons in the country. The AFC once again calls on GCOM to implement enhanced measures of voters' identification including biometrics and cameras in the place of poll, to ensure that the general and regional elections of 2025 is free, fair, and acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David Patterson, Chairperson of the Alliance for Change. We will now have a statement from Dr. Vincent Adams. Dr. Adams is online.
Thanks, Beverly, and welcome and good afternoon to the media. Um, I'll be talking about the supposed bill or spill bill that is tabled in Parliament for approval. After enduring Jagdeo Nandalal's constant hype of this oil spill bill for 2 years, with some hope as faint as it was for their change of heart through our enlightenment to at least finally show some care for its people, of its people's well-being, we were once again duped and betrayed by this so-called bill, which could be described as nothing else but an all-time scam. The assessment of all who are most knowledgeable and have been following this most critical matter of consequences to the nation's economic and environmental security. For instance, before I'd even read the bill, Guyana's most distinguished international environmental attorney texted me with an utter disgust describing the bill as garbage. The bill has absolutely no evidence whatsoever, none, Jills, to come close to matching the incessant spouting of Jagdeo's and Nandalal's words of no limit to the coverage and unlimited liability coverage. There is nothing new or novel here as far as the PPP's well-known opposition to unlimited liability coverage is concerned. We know the history of the coalition enshrining unlimited liability coverage, which was agreed upon by Exxon and put into law, only to have it cast aside by the PPPC government as soon as they entered office, resulting in the Collins and White lawsuit and Judge Kissoon's devastating ruling against the government, concluding, among other rebukes, that in quote, the government is submissive and relegated itself to a state of laxity and abdicated its responsibility, thereby putting this nation and its people in grave potential danger of calamitous disaster. But instead of taking their licks like big boys and save face as any responsible government would do, Nandalal doubled down, going all the way to the CCJ, betraying Guyana by joining Exxon in appealing the case against unlimited liability and against his people. In addition, at almost all of our AFC pressers, we vociferously expressed our fight for unlimited liability coverage. And let us not forget that MP Patterson had tabled a bill in Parliament for unlimited liability that, not surprisingly, didn't get anywhere. But obviously, fearful that they cannot face the electorate armed with all of this information about their fighting tooth and nail against their own law that safeguards the country from environmental, financial bankruptcy in subservience to Exxon, they decided to concoct this foolery of change of heart with a sham bill that actually brazenly does the opposite, doubling down against unlimited liability. As if he got an inkling that that may be too much for people to swallow, Mr. Jagger decided to put some lipstick on the pig with an even bigger masterpiece of a lie, making up a ridiculous story suggesting the opposition, especially the AFC, has been the one against unlimited liability coverage and not the PPP. Folks, I know how incredulous this would have sounded. So, before you think I'm making stuff up, please go to 1 hour 25 of his Jagdio's presser of last week, when he says, and I quote, I suspect that Nigel Hughes must have gotten a call from Exxon to say we Exxon don't want that. In fact, they Exxon have said in private comments that they they, Exxon, need to cap liabilities, and we, the government, are saying no. You, Exxon, are responsible for all liabilities associated with an oil spill. Folks, the only semblance of truthfulness in that cock and bull story is that, yes, the PPPC, did have a private conversation with Exxon, which was referenced in Judge Kissoon's decision at page 47. Judge Kissoon documented that that private conversation resulted in a draft agreement between the PPPC government and Exxon for a cap on liability. The judge, in no uncertain terms, ruled that the draft agreement was erroneous and self-serving, and private discussions cannot circumvent an EIA or an environmental permit. In defiance of the judge, we all know about their finalizing of the agreement with a $2 billion cap, but yet still can't show evidence of the $2 billion despite the appeals judge's direction to do so. So, despite all of those litany of facts, which has been arguably the most publicized, how could this man so abashedly lie with a straight face that it was the PPPC which was all for unlimited liability while the opposition was not? This is not normal and may explain why he, Jagdeo, has to constantly remind himself that he is not insane at his press conference. Folks, all they did in this claim to be bill was arbitrarily copy the right words from the EPA Act and permits written by the coalition without backing up the words with how will the words be achieved. Words such as responsible party is liable for all damages and for any and all cost for restoration of the environment to its natural state, but absolutely nothing about how the financial assurance will be guaranteed, except to say that it will be guided by the EPA Act, but nothing about how this will be guaranteed according to the Act. The coalition's unlimited liability requirement was guided by the Act. Judge Kissoon's decision was guided by the Act. So nothing new here. The only thing being hinted at and slickly not put into the bill because of its obvious foolishness is Jagdeo's ludicrous assertion about unlimited, meaning the $2 billion cap, even though they said it didn't have a cap, said the $2 billion cap plus the $600 million plus the assets. As we have taught and embarrassed this man Jagdeo over and over, that all fixed cost, fixed and movable assets belong to the government, since it have to be returned to the government per the contract. So we can't seize our own assets. If Jagdeo is still entertaining this foolishness, we challenge him to one, list the assets outside of what has to be returned to the government, and two, since he claims that Exxon has assets of $14 billion, and the number is reducing, by the way, which could add up. If you add the 14 billion to the 2.6 billion, you're going to be end up with a total of 16.5 billion, 16.6 billion. The Macondo costed 145. The Macondo spill in the Gulf cost 145 billion. If we have such a spill, or even half of that spill, let's say 70 billion, who pays the remaining large amount? Anyway, though meaningless, a few things still jumped out from the supposed bill. One, no prevention. Though the pillar of all environmental stewardship is grounded in prevention, and though the title of the bill is led by prevention, and if there is prevention, there will be no need for any liability, much less unlimited. Two, thus, for the title of the bill, you can start, Mr. Jagdeo, with inserting that all operators shall comply with the law, including complying with the EIA requiring producing oil within its safe limit. As we all know, Exxon is allowed by the government to unlawfully and recklessly and unsafely produce way above the safe limits, enhancing the risk for an oil spill. Three, the oil spill incident board in the so-called bill is to determine to evaluate claims brought about by individuals comprised of, listen to this, it comprised of the Ministry of Natural Resources and a representative from the EPA and a representative of the responsible party, but no representation from the affected party. And four, the minister may make subsidiary legislation. I want to know, the country would like to know, since when does a minister make legislation? Lastly, but most strikingly, it is loony to continue to wage such a fierce court battle against the same unlimited liability claimed to be proposed in the bill. So the government can prove us all wrong in our interpretation of the bill by right now dropping your appeal that fighting so bravely against the unlimited liability in the Collins and White case. Thank you.
Arising out of the death of Adriana Young. We are now over a week since Miss Young allegedly drowned in the pool at the hotel at Tushin. The calls that emanated immediately after her death continue to persist for an credible international forensic agency to assist the Guyana Police Force in the investigation into her death. Those calls are now international. They're very wide and very varied, and there have been candlelight protests and vigilance all over the world. We call on the government of Guyana to do a simple thing. All they have to do is request the assistance of any foreign agency. We suggest the British in the case of Scotland Yard, the Canadians in the case of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and of course the Americans in the case of the FBI, to have them come to conduct an independent investigation. This is particularly important for Guyana for this reason. If we leave this unresolved, it will remain like a permanent sore upon our national consciousness that we collectively as a country failed Adriana Young. And therefore, to solve all the issues that have arisen, we call on the government, we implore them, let's deal with this nationally. Secondly, the conduct of the Guyana Police Force, when we thought it could not become more incredible, did that yesterday when they attempted to provide an explanation for why they issued the public statement that they did that Ms. Young had left the hotel in the company of some person. That statement just needs to be read superficially for one to realize the desperate state in which the Guyana Police Force is. An international investigation will put all speculation in relation to the Guyana Police Force and why they acted the way they acted to rest. And I believe it's in the interest of the Guyana Police Force to have an independent third party do this. Secondly, the murder of Keon Fujine in the United States, on the west at Half Mile Linden, continues to be unresolved. Not a single charge has been brought against the police officer who was observed shooting Mr. Fujine to death. It is now almost 3 weeks since that incident, and we believe that there is evidence in the possession of the Guyana Police Force for them not only to have concluded the investigation, but to have instituted murder charges. Thirdly, and particularly in relation to Linden, we want to go back to the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry made in 2013, which suggested and recommended very strongly that a civilian police oversight authority be established. And since that report was accepted by the President then, we believe and we call for the immediate establishment of a civilian oversight authority for police misconduct. Fourthly, you would have noticed over the last 24 hours that several persons who either gave statements or were willing to give statements in relation to what happened at Tushin have suddenly recanted. We believe that pressure has been brought to bear on them, and therefore we repeat a call that we made at least a year ago, which is for the immediate establishment and operationalization of the Protected Persons Act of 2018. That allowed persons who wanted to whistleblow to be protected, to allow them to give their statements, and to allow the prosecution of people who enjoyed official protection for their misdeeds. We again repeat that call. All the President has to do is direct that it becomes immediately effective. Fifthly, and I'm following up on what the chairman of the party said earlier, we still have not received the census. This is now 3 years overdue. And with all the speculation, and clearly with the Minister of Home Affairs not being fully aware of exactly how many Venezuelans are in Guyana, it makes the production of the census even more important. And we want to repeat our earlier calls. Finally, and I go back and I end with the investigation into the death of Ms. Adriana Young and the subsequent police actions, we believe that the continued presence of the current Commissioner of Police in the office of Commissioner of Police continues to interfere with the conduct of a fair investigation into her death, and since the Guyana Police Force falls under his responsibility, we do not believe that a credible, internationally conducted investigation can take place once he occupies that office. So we wish to repeat our demand that the Commissioner of Police be sent on leave during the currency of this investigation. And finally, on a happier note, I'd like to wish all citizens of Guyana happy Arrival Day, and we hope that this will cause us to reflect upon the long journey that we have made and the hopefully happy future that is ahead of us. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nigel Hughes, leader of the Alliance for Change. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, we will now take your questions. Of course, the usual courtesy, we ask that you extend us, identify yourself and the agency you represent. If you can use the raise hand feature to identify if you need a question, to ask a question, and I recognize Mr. Adam Harris.
A very good afternoon, all. For Mr. Patterson, I hope I heard you correct. 23 registered Venezuelans in Region 4. Is that the figure that you got? 2-3?
2-3.
All right.
Adam, you're absolutely correct. The Minister of Home Affairs, and you can go on the Parliament Facebook page, and of course you have a recording of the session. 23, according to the Minister of Home Affairs, 23 Venezuelans are registered in Region 4 from over the last 6 years.
And has the party been able to check with GCOM to ascertain the number of Venezuelans registered in Guyana on the GCOM list? Or are these Venezuelans registered in Region 4 descendants of Guyanese and not considered Venezuelans?
Adam, getting information out to GCOM is almost on par with getting information out to the government. When we met with GCOM, I think that was last year or early this year. Early this year, we requested of them to provide us with a list of every person who has been registered using a Form F. And Form F is the form that the GRO issues to somebody who is naturalized. And obviously, if we get that, if GCOM provides that information, we can see how many persons who are registered without having an original birth certificate, because this is you get a Form F, and then the Form F makes you eligible to get onto the GCOM's list. They, at the meeting, they did not say that they had any issues with it, other than one commissioner saying that whatever information they give to the Alliance for Change, they're obligated to give to every other political party, to which we said we have no problems with that. And it's been 4 months or more, and we have heard absolutely nothing. We'd have to keep trying, but I mean, as you say, GCOM has been a disappointing entity when it comes to public disclosure of information. We also asked them, and Adam, just for clarity, to provide us with the preliminary voters list in a searchable format, in the sense of an Excel, I mean, of course, the massive big PDF, to enable us to do exactly that, so we can actually search and provide filters and those things like that. Once again, they did not say they have an objection to that. Once again, 4 months or 5 months after, we're still waiting. I mean, there's much we can do to force GCOM to be transparent.
Thank you, Mr. David Patterson. Mr. Harris, Adam Harris, you have further questions?
Yes, I had one.
Please go ahead.
I was going to allow my colleague. This one is from Mr. Hughes. Sir, you talked a bit about Adriana Young's death. President Irfan Ali said that the pathologists contended that there was no evidence of forcible drowning. It was the first time I heard of that. Was such a statement made by the pathologists?
Thank you for the question. I have not seen the report from the pathologist. Mr. Wade, as you know, is counsel for the family. I have not seen it, but I certainly believe that the way to address all of this is to let us have the best forensic experts internationally assist the police in the conduct of this investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. That's it from you, Mr. Harris?
At the moment,
Okay,
I have
thank
other
you.
questions,
I don't
but I
see
can
any
wait.
other hands raised. Is there anyone else out there who may not be able to raise their hands? I see NCN Guyana, I see NCN and others. Any questions
all right.
coming in?
You got good eyesight. Let me talk about Mr. Vince Adams and the
But please
oil
go
spill
ahead. Please go ahead,
Yeah.
Adam.
Now, Mr. Vince Adams spoke about the oil spill legislation, and he reminded us that the government had gone to the appeal court supporting the Exxon on this oil spill legislation, and it seems to have done an about face. Sir, are you in a position to say whether the government has withdrawn its appeal?
Vince.
We are muted. We believe you might be
you have
muted.
to
We have not
unmute.
heard anything you said.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You'll have to go through all of that.
Okay. No, I don't. Well, you know, if you read, first of all, in calling it an about face, that's what they want to let it appear to be. It is not an about face. If you listen to Jaglio and Nandalal, of course you would believe that way, because it's because of the con that they want to give the people interpretation, that somehow they've gotten this epiphany, that that unlimited liability coverage is a good thing when they've been opposing it all along. So the bill is not an about face to start it, but on the other, to answer your question directly, no, there is no information that they have withdrawn from this appeal that they've been fighting tooth and nail, against Collins and White. And we at the last week we called for it, and this week we're calling for it again at the AFC. We're calling for them to withdraw themselves if they want to prove. That's the only thing that makes sense, Adam. How could you be be going after or claiming that now you for an unlimited liability coverage at the same time you're fighting it in court? Doesn't make any sense. It shows unless they withdraw it, it's nothing but a scam.
Let me add something for Adam, reminder for Adam. Adam, the Attorney General he's on a losing streak. As everyone knows that, he's losing. And every time the courts take independently, just as in the oil spill case, independently make a judgment against him, knowing that he can win, what he approaches the Parliament to change the laws. You can recall about, I don't know, the last time in Parliament, the Land Acquisition Act. After having been defeated in court, after the judge said that there are certain documents that must be in place and those things like that, under the guise of expediency, the PPP went to change the laws to acquire, compulsory acquire persons' properties. Because obviously, then, and I do think in this case, just as even if he hasn't withdrawn it, I know that their legal persons would have said to them that the case doesn't stand scrutiny, and so what they're doing now is to try to amend the laws under the guise of them complying and those things like that. But obviously, he's on a losing streak, and to avoid going 0-40, he used their one-seat majority to change their laws to avoid being embarrassed in the courts.
And just to add to what David
Thank
said, let me
you,
remind
David.
folks.
Any other questions?
Beverly, let me remind, just to add to David, let me remind Adam and the others that we had predicted on this same forum, after Judge Kissoon's ruling, you remember we predicted and we wrote about it, that this whole bill, from the time it started, right after Judge Kissoon's ruling, is an attempt to overthrow or negate Judge Kissoon's ruling, and that's exactly what's going on here without any substance.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. I recognize Antonio Day. Antonio, please go ahead. Unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, Antonio, please go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a Congressman Thomas I have a question directed to Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, you would have made mention for oil legislation to protect whistleblowers, but I know that you are aware of the Business Protection Act of 2018, which speaks to this provision, but I would like to seek clarity. Are you recommending that there is another legislation, or this legislation should be more rigid in its status?
No, we're talking about the same thing. The act is actually called the Protected Disclosures Act. And all I'm asking for is for it to be operationalized. So we're talking about the same act. I'm not calling for any new legislation because we haven't even put this into effect. We passed the legislation, we passed the act in 2018, President assented, but the act makes provision for it to come into effect, and that has not been done. So we're asking for that to happen. As you remember, with the paper shorts issue last year, or the year before, this was at the forefront of everybody's minds, and up to now, despite that call made about a year and a half ago, it still has not yet been operationalized. And we believe in this particular instance, with the death of Adriana young, several people are recanting because they have no protection. Pressure is being brought to bear on them, and therefore that has affected the conduct of the investigation.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Anything
Mr.
else,
Lurt,
Antonio?
yes, if you can permit me with one more question, I have
Please
a
go
question
ahead.
directed to Mr. Patterson. Mr. Patterson, as former Minister of Public Infrastructure, you would have seen in the media that the Public Utilities Commission reported that they are not going to take any corrective actions against the Ghana Power and Light Company amidst the incompetence and the issues at the power utility company. Your comments or remarks on this?
Thank you for that question, Antonio. I was surprised as anyone. But let me start from the beginning. The Public Utility Commission, prior to up to about 2 years ago, I think, or a year and a half ago, was chaired by a very competent chairperson, a very independent board. I think her name is Ms. Della Britton. The government has come in and they put in their former Minister Nanda Gopal as the chair of PUC. In answering your question before I even answer, specifically in 2018, I think it was, the commission, the PUC under Ms. Britton, fined GPL, under which, and I know that for sure, and at that time we failed 3 of the 8 criterias, and we were fined for not meeting the targets set by GPL. You know, GPL sets these targets. These targets are not set by the PUC. GPL comes every year, as they did recently, to say to PUC and the Ghana public, these are the targets which we will achieve for 2024. Fast forward to very recently, 7 of the 8 targets set by GPL, they were unable to accomplish. The one and only target that they were able to accomplish was sending the bills out on time. Sending the bills out at the time, that's the thing. All the other targets, I mean, blockouts, hours of block, length of time of blockout, service, and all the other 7, they were unable to do that. However, the PUC, under the chairmanship of the PPP appointed chairman and a very stacked and unimpartial board, decided that it's not the duty for the country to fine GPL. And the reason that they give, and this is the most amazing part of it, is that PUC took note that GPL promised to do better in 2025. And no, I mean, I'm hearing people saying, you read the report. They promised, GPL promised that they will do better in 2025. It's obviously, and every citizen knows that, you know, I mean, that without a strong regulatory body, the GPL will continue providing us with a substandard service. I am personally disappointed because I could recall that when we were fined in 2018, all hell broke loose. I mean, that was the first year of Mr. Albert Gordon, who we brought in from Jamaica, and obviously when we hit all our targets since then. Obviously, GPL and PUC are they have zero interest in consumers. The question, you know, I mean, every single person rings and complains and asks me, low voltage, their equipment has been burnt and destroyed. PUC took no note of that. They just were willing to say that the GPL promised to do better, and they will let them off the hook. We are descending faster than a rocket falling out of space.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Any other questions? Okay, it seems not. Let me just double check. NCN Guyana. Nothing there. Okay, then, ladies and gentlemen of the media, I wish to take this opportunity to bring this press conference to a close, to wish you a very safe weekend. It's kind of rainy out here today. Just be safe, be dry. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. Thank you.